Good evening, fellow travellers, lovely people. Welcome along. It's Neil Oliver live on GB News TV and on radio. Tonight on the programme, as the crisis in Gaza intensifies, I'll speak to retired US Army Colonel Douglas Macgregor about the situation. We'll also be joined by Ralph Schöllhammer, an Assistant Professor in Political Science and Economics, to discuss the continuing crisis facing humanity. And then, on a very different note, we'll be getting news from Dorchester, where they've been trying to set a world record for the most people dressed as ghosts to gather in one place. Yes, I did hear myself saying that out loud. All of that and plenty of chat with my excellent panellist, Andrew Eborn. Well, joining me throughout tonight's show is broadcaster and lawyer Andrew Eborn. Andrew, your reaction? Good to see you.
I have to say, we're in dreadful times. Nobody could possibly object to that. I think we are. It is some of the most obscene things which are happening at the moment. And they always say the first casualty in war is the truth. And it's good that you're here to hold people's feet to the fire and to call it out. There are some things, obviously, in the interest of balance, and often my role is to play devil's advocate to ensure that those who are not here to represent that would basically have their voice heard. And you mentioned about Boris. We should obviously declare it was announced yesterday that he's going to be coming here as a presenter. And people will say that he got an 80-seat majority. He was the Heineken politician, if you like. He reached parts of the electorate that other politicians couldn't reach, is what they said. He then turned into a Marmite character with his Peppa Pig and Porky Pies and an avalanche of alliterations. There are all sorts of things there. But the great thing, if you want to draw a crowd, start a fight. So as long as this is a platform on which you can debate these things and basically challenge people as appropriate, that's got to be right. But I'm totally with you on war. It's completely senseless. And the tragedy, this horrific scenes that we're seeing day in, day out, is absolutely obscene. These people, at the very least, exist in the same world as you and me, and they're watching at least some of the same coverage. How can these people, like Graham, suggest, you know, outright attack by the US on Iran without speculating at least what might be the consequences?
Well, I think about this. We once had politicians like Winston Churchill who wrote books while he was Prime Minister. John F. Kennedy wrote book reviews while he was on the campaign trail. We simply no longer have that kind of politicians. We have an education, we have a knowledge problem in our political class. I mean, it's quite serious. But by the way, also in the media, maybe some of you viewers noticed, like CNN published recently a map of Israel where they completely botched where was it they put Sderot into the West Bank, and Tel Aviv were actually Haifa. They completely botched it up. We don't know anything anymore, and we'll talk about this later, because I think that's one of the symptoms of multiculturalism. If everything is of equal value, what's the point of knowing anything about anything?
And the extraordinary thing as well, isn't it, they all say history repeats itself, and the reason for that is people
they don't know history.
Well, exactly. People don't basically learn the lessons from history. And you look at these things, we've talked about this often, you look at this and what is a very predictable course. If you follow this sort of horrible narrative and the terrible sort of speak, if you like, that happens in these situations.
But that's the thing, right? Everybody's looking for the narrative. I mean, we see now whether it's Russia, Ukraine, whether it's Israel, Palestine, and everybody says, which is my team? On which side do I have? There is, I know this is hard to say, and I'm not using the word context, but there is countries, populations think differently, right? The Chinese look different at the world. The Russians look different at the world. I'm not saying that this is a view I share, but the point of diplomacy once was to say, how does the other guy look at the world, and what does this mean for us? We no longer do this. We look at this and think, oh, they just think like us, and if they say something else, they don't really mean it. And then when they really mean it, we act very surprised.
And the worst thing is we live in a diseased information world, don't we, where there's a lot of division. And as soon as you have the sort of narrative being poisoned in this way, that division increases.
Yeah. We had Brett Weinstein, evolutionary biologist, on last week, and he was saying that it's simply the case that the opposing forces now are too powerful. We've all got the same terrifying technologies, and the old model of, you know, one group bumping off another group to gain some kind of advantage, it's not to be allowed, because we pose too much of a realistic threat to one another. We have to find ways to cooperate, comfortably or uncomfortably.
Right, and I think for this we need to talk. As we also said, right, one point of diplomacy was also you talk with the people you don't like and not just with the people you like, right? Yeah. Being US ambassador to Canada is not very exciting. US ambassador to Russia is a different story. And I think this is what we have to relearn. The 19th century, when we had politicians, you know, of the caliber of a Gladstone and a Palmerston, they knew this, right? You get together, you lock yourself up in a room, you have all the maps on the wall, and you don't leave the room until you hammer out an agreement.
George or not war is what they said.
Exactly.
Coming up next, we will be hearing from Colonel Douglas Macgregor as the crisis in the Middle East, as we've been discussing, continues to cause huge concern throughout the world. See you in a few minutes. And Andrew, obviously, you know, how do you feel? I mean, I listened to the Colonel, I listened to him elsewhere, and there's something, you know, they're very straightforward and cogent about that argument, that this is just a situation that escalates inevitably.
And it is interesting. I mean, he made some very interesting point about Washington being stuck in 1991, and there are so many questions to be answered. I was talking to a number of people about Benjamin Netanyahu, and they're saying that he's finished on this sort of basis. How did one of the best security forces in the world allow this to slip? And all sorts of speculations, all sorts of conspiracy theories come out as a result of it. Wag the dog, start a war to unite people, and so on and so forth. You need to look at this, but remember that there are human lives at the end of it. And I think in amongst all this narrative, that's the problem. And the poison that we see in social media is now spilling out onto the streets.
Welcome back, where we can pick up this conversation about the tragic situation in the Middle East. And I'd like to pick it up first of all with Professor Schöllhammer. It seems insane to me, after decade or many years of multiculturalism, mass immigration, all of these cultures which have not assimilated, have not integrated, they're living parallel lives throughout Europe and here in Britain, that after all of that, and we were being told that that was the right thing to do, to now poke a stick into what is effectively a wasp's nest. Why now? It seems like madness to me.
I think it's madness, but it goes to my big issue with multiculturalism is always it's actually the laziest of all ideologies, right? If Andrew says, you're a communist, and I say I'm a fascist, we immediately would have an argument, right? Because these are really clashing oppositions. But the idea of multiculturalism was always basically everything is of equal value. Like the core value of multiculturalism is not to have a core value. So all these people that came, we never really showed an interest in them, right? The idea was whatever they bring, it doesn't matter. Their values, my values, it's all the same. And as you say, we completely ignored, we still ignore. Many of those groups don't like each other, right? So we don't just import a clash between the quote-unquote, white British population and immigration. It's also among immigration groups. We never made an effort to actually look at what those people think, what they believe. Ironically, the true multiculturalists, the much-stamped British imperialists, they learned obscure languages in the last corner of the planet. They would have been curious who is coming to Britain, what do they think, what do they believe, what does it mean, what is taught in the schools, what is preached in the mosques. We turned a blind eye to it, and now, as you correctly say, we're all surprised that this is all of a sudden happening.
Andrew, are we victims of our own ignorance?
Oh, I think absolutely. And again, we were making such clear points beforehand. People forget the whole history of it. Suella Braverman was saying, look, multiculturalism doesn't work. It's all about integration. But the interesting thing, and we touched on this in the break, because obviously the dialogue continues, is what is the solution? Because I think all four of us agree at the moment about the problems and the reason we've got here, and we can see a horrendous future unless people address that. So maybe we should lag it. What are the solutions?
Colonel Macgregor, is there a way out? I mean, are you optimistic or pessimistic that there's a way that can be navigated here, or are we actually just going to have to watch a car crash and then pick through the wreckage?
President Biden appears to be largely a cutout, largely a facade. The people who are governing country are a combination of elected and unelected people that are, in Western terms, what we call in the Soviet or post-Soviet world, oligarchs. I don't see how you turn them off. The biggest problem is that whereas Putin and Xi, for instance, both have a very, very acute sense of limitations. They know what is or is not possible. They have long memories that involve wars that did enormous damage to them. In the United States, there is no sense of limitation right now. There's no sense that we only have so many resources. In fact, it's the opposite. You heard President Biden reading from the speech that was written for him. The United States of America can do anything. We can finance multiple wars at the same time. We can do anything. We are the America of the Second World War. Well, that America Neil, never really existed anyway. We were always limited in what we could do. In fact, that's why Eisenhower made such an excellent president. He understood that we could never fight another war like that again in our history. We've lost all of that. There's no fear of the consequences. As a result, I'm not very optimistic. I think that we are going to march down this path into hell, a hell, frankly, of our own making, and one that is unnecessary.
We used to pay attention to one another's cultures. You know, there was a time when there was a curiosity and there was, you know, there was an attempt made to assimilate and to make room for. When did we lose that sensitivity to other people?
I think it began in the aftermath of the Second World War, and it's gotten progressively worse over the years. And unfortunately, this sense of superpower uniqueness in the 1990s simply accelerated the problem. And now, none of it is true. Americans are not stupid people. They're looking at immigration and they're waking up to a nightmare. They're saying, well, wait a minute, these people haven't come here to become Americans. Well, of course not. They're setting up their own countries with their own grievances, their own preferences, their own set of hatreds on our soil. We don't like it. We don't want it. Well, it's here. And the question that I continue to ask is, where have you been? Well, people were asleep. They were too busy watching television, too busy enjoying the good life. And they were dismissing problems out of hand, and they listened to the propaganda. If you raise questions, well, you must be a bigot. If you don't like something, you're an anti-Semite. On and on and on. And Americans are not any of those things by nature. In fact, I think we're shamelessly tolerant, something which I blame in part the British for. We're too damn tolerant. And it's costing us dearly here at home, and it's going to cost us overseas.
Again, this is a very risky game we're playing.
It's a fascinating conversation. I have to say, on behalf of you know, everyone here and Colonel Macgregor, it's such a relief to me, at least, to hear this conversation take place on, you know, mainstream television, because at least, if there's to be any hope at all, it's based on people getting this kind of general understanding of the scale of the problem. So, Colonel Macgregor, thank you so much for making time for us this evening, and I hope our paths cross again soon. Thank you. And thank you both as well. That was just, at least it was an airing of some of the problems. We've got another break, after which maybe, well, you might say it's a bit of a palate cleanse, something much lighter. It'll be about the Halloween spirit and learning about a new world record attempt. If it sounds spooktacular, you're not wrong. Yes, you did hear me say that. See you in a couple. Welcome back. I have long had a fascination with the notion of haunting, you know, what it means to have that sense of something strange. I've got a new book out, which I will shamelessly publicise. It's called Hauntings, a Book of Ghosts and Where to Find Them. And so it's fair to say that it's a bit of a self-indulgence, you know, for me to be introducing this topic on here. It's Halloween on Tuesday night. But the spookiness began earlier today with a world record attempt in the historic town of Dorchester. The record for the most people to gather in one spot dressed as ghosts is 560, Andrew. But did it get beaten this afternoon? Now, I'm just hearing that our guest has been spirited away.
Oh, no!
We have a guest who should have been down the line, but something strange has happened, Andrew.
Yeah. How strange. Well, I did know it was 560 because it was in Ireland in 2017. What I also found fascinating is that there's a similar attempt in Ohio at the moment, and I haven't heard the results of that one either.
There's something for me that I sort of investigate in book, that we've been telling each other ghost stories forever.
Oh, we love it.
I mean, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is older than the Bible, is a ghost story in some respects. And from that point on, for as long as we've had writing, we've written down ghost stories. What is that preoccupation?
Well, we're a nation and we're a world of storytellers, aren't we? That's the great thing. We've got them back.
I've got Tara. I've got Tara. Tara has manifest. Hello, Tara. Was there a new record set this afternoon in Dorchester?
There was a world record in the way that for Dorchester, for sure, but not a world record. No.
Oh no!
So tell us all about it. What did unfold? How many spooky people were there?
So we had over 200 people here, which is great, considering the weather was absolutely appalling. Lots of families, lots of fun. Really good turnout considering the weather. We were really happy.
What would you say? We've been talking here, I don't know if you were able to hear us, but Andrew and I have been talking about this preoccupation, this obsession that so many people seem to have with the very notion of ghosts and haunting. How do you seek to understand that part of the human psyche?
Gosh, there's a question. I don't think I could ever understand it. I know that in Dorchester, there's a long tradition of ghost sightings and a lot of history that goes back to the time of Judge Jeffrey, for example, who was known for sentencing well over 380 people to be hung. And people are said to come back to haunt Judge Jeffrey.
Andrew, is it something that you share? Is there an experience that you can share with us where, just for whatever reason, you felt the hackles rise, a sense of something else?
Well, every time I come to the studio with you, Neil, I feel a sense of something else. I think it is close. It would be arrogant of us to think that this is it. This is the only life that we live. And I believe in energy, and I believe that that energy must survive after we go to different places, whatever your different views. But I love it. We are fascinated with ghosts, and I think it's our sort of wish, if you like, for immortality.
Tara, is Halloween as a celebration, a festival, whatever you want to call it, has it made a comeback? I'm very aware that in my lifetime, my children were very much encouraged when they were growing up by school and everyone else to get into the Halloween spirit. Is it something that we've taken more to heart than we used to?
I absolutely think so. During this past week, which is half term here in Dorset, we've been running a witch hunt, a Halloween hunt, a trick-or-treat around the shopping centre, and it's been absolutely huge. We've had 200-300 families coming through the square every single day, all dressed up in their fancy dress, and they absolutely love it. Pumpkin carving in the square. It's, much bigger, I think, than it used to be.
Lovely stuff, Tara. Thank you for giving us a light and spiritual end to the show. That's all for me on Neil Oliver Live for this week. Thanks to all my guests, Andrew especially, who's still with me, Professor Schöllhammer and the Colonel, Douglas Macgregor. Next up, it's the Saturday 5.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best.
Bellissima.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.